while they interact with various levels of customers during the design process. So in module 3, we are going to discuss, it is about design communication, where we will be discussing various modes of communication the designers can use while they interact with their customers during the design process. So that is the basic purpose of module 3. We are going to discuss various modes of communication a designer will be using while interacting with various type or levels of customers during the design process. So these are the topics we will be covering in this module. Importance, we will start with the introduction on importance of communication in design, and we will then go to different modes of communication, communicating designs graphically using pictures and illustrations and images, freehand drawings, etc. Then communicating designs in writing. Always at the end of a design project, there will be a design report, which is a written textual document. So that is also one way of communicating the designs to various users or intended users of the design. Communicating designs orally, the designers may also present their problem as well as the solution to a group of people by using a presentation, which is an oral way of communicating the design and the problem. Similarly, they can also make a model or a prototype of the solution and demonstrate that prototype or show the model to the users so that users and other people will be able to understand the solution and the model of the product. That is prototyping and modeling. And then also some cases we try to prove our design by some proof of concept, developing a proof of concept, or by developing a mathematical model of the solution for the problem, right? So these are different ways or different modes of communication an engineer or a designer can use while doing the design process. So please interrupt me if there is some problem in between, if you are not able to hear my voice, or if the presentation is not visible, please interrupt me so that there will not be any problem in the overall presentation. And also, as I said, whenever I make some mistakes because of my lack of understanding in a particular area, you can always interrupt me and correct me, right? That will also help. That will help us to improve our understanding and deliver the class in a proper way. So as I said, the communication is very important. Unless the designer and engineer can effectively communicate the problem as well as the solutions to his customers, your solution or design may not be accepted by the end customers. So the primary aim of a designer while designing a product is to solve a problem or to meet the needs of some users or people, right? And customers of a designer includes a lot of people, a lot of category of people. It is not only the end user who is going to use the end product. That is not the only customer for a designer. As far as a designer is concerned, there are different category of customers. End users are one category. Similarly, the sponsoring organization who is funding the money for the design project, they would be looking for the profit from that product. So they are also a customer. So their needs also should be addressed. They are primarily interested in profit by selling this product, right? So their needs also should be addressed. End users, the needs will be totally different. Similarly, there will be some manufacturing department, they are going to produce this product or manufacture this product. So when they try to manufacture this product, if it is too complex, the cost of manufacturing will increase. So they will always try to reduce the manufacturing cost. So their needs are totally different. So a designer should also address the needs of manufacturing department. Similarly, salespeople are going to the market to sell this product. So when they go to the market, when they talk to the customers, they should be able to tell something which is unique about your product. So their needs are totally different, the salespeople or the marketing people. Similarly, the operational people in an organization where this product is used, they have to operate this product and maintain the product continuously throughout 24/7, for example, right? So the needs of operational people and the needs of the people who are going to maintain the product also has to be considered while designing a product. If it is very difficult to maintain, if the product fails so frequently, and if it is very difficult to maintain that product and bring back that product to operation, if it is very difficult, then the maintenance people, service people, and operational people will be unhappy. So you need to make them also happy as a designer. So a designer has to meet the needs of so many people, right, while designing the product. And they have to communicate, he has to communicate to all these type of customers to understand their needs and also to present the solution or idea for solving the problem to all these people. Then only your design will be successful in the market, successful. So that is the basic purpose of this module. How can we communicate with various types of users to understand their problem, as well as to present your ideas and solutions to them to solve the problem. So that's what we discussed. So in order to do that, the designer can use various modes of communication, because he has to use various modes of communication because there are different levels of customers. The customers may not be of all same level. An operational guy may not be as knowledgeable as a manufacturing person or end user. So there will be different levels of people with different skills and knowledge. So depending on the level of knowledge and details required by each individual users or customers, the designer has to communicate this in different ways. So for doing that, he can use different modes, different methods of communication. He can use pictures, he can use images, he can do a presentation, he can also do prepare a document, write a report and give it to them. So that's what we are going to learn. What are the different ways of communication a designer or engineer can use in communicating his design solution as well as the problem. For example, as I said, different levels of users are there. Depending on the need of the person, the need of the customer group, you need to present appropriate information, right? So it is not necessary to give all the design details to an end user who is going to use the product. So you should be interested in knowing how to use the product. That's it. You may not be interested in knowing the internal details of the product. Whereas a person who is in the manufacturing department, you need to give the entire details of the design because he has to manufacture the product. In terms of dimension, the materials to be used, all that has to be given to the manufacturing department, whereas that much detail is not required for an end user who is going to use the product. So for end user, a conceptual design of the product, a conceptual model or conceptual diagram of the product is enough. Whereas for a manufacturing department, you need to give the detailed design drawings with the dimensions and the scale and the materials to be used. All that has to be provided to a manufacturing department. So the level of detail, level of communication you need to do with different groups will be totally different. For that, you can use different modes of communication. So if you don't do this in the right way, if you don't communicate this effectively, designs may fail and your designs may not be accepted by the end customers, right? They may not be happy with your design. If you cannot communicate your solution to all the different category of users in an effective way, your design will naturally your design will eventually fail and designs may not be accepted by different groups of customers. That's why the communication is very, very important as far as a designer is concerned. So this is a very popular cartoon which shows the failure of design because of lack of effective communication, right? So the first picture shows this is how the customer explained their requirement to a project leader. And the project leader understood the requirement like this. And finally, the project leader explained the problem to the engineer, and engineer understood it in a different way, and he has designed it like this. And designer designed the product based on his understanding given by the project leader. And based on the design, the programmer wrote the program to develop the product. And programmer understood the design in a particular way. He interpreted the design And based on that, he coded the program, and he coded like this. And sales executives started marketing the product, meeting all prospective customers. They explained this product in a very, very interesting, with a lot of frills and beauty. So they explained it in a totally different way to the prospective customers so that they can sell this product, right? And the documentation, if you look at the documentation of the product, there was nothing much documented in the documentation. Design report, there was nothing much in the design report or other documentation. That's what happened. And the operational people, when they installed the product, they understood the product and installed it like this. And the accounts guys finally invoice the customer by understanding the product cost in totally in a different way, right? And this is how the support guys did not understand the product completely. They could understand only a part of the product, and they supported with that partial knowledge. They supported the product with that partial knowledge. That's what happened. And finally, if you look at what the customer really wanted is like this, and you can see it is totally different at different stages. People understood it in different way. Even the customer explained it in a different way. Finally, different levels of people understood the problem in different ways, and they came up with the different products. So that is the problem with lack of effective communication during the design process. So this is what we are going to eliminate once we understand how can we communicate our problem and the solution in a more effective way to various levels of customers. We can avoid such problems when we do design projects. So following are the different ways by which a designer can communicate with their customers during different stages of design process. So designers normally, if you look at the designers who come from design schools like product designers, communication designers, interaction designers, UI UX designers, environmental designers. So these are the courses done by design schools. If you look at those designers, graphic designers, for example, communication designers, product designers, who come from these schools, they always start with sketching. Whenever they talk to the customer, they understand something, immediately they start sketching using freehand drawings. They are good at art and creative work. They start sketching. My daughter is a designer, that's why I know that. So I can see she keep on drawing something. Whenever she gets some paper, she has a habit of just sketching something, keep on doing something. Finally, so when they talk to customer, they keep on drawing something. So they will keep on drawing different versions, different diagrams for the same thing. And finally, they show it to the customer. All this they will show to the customer. So whichever customer whichever drawings which looks interesting for the customer, they will shortlist. And finally, what they do is they scan these hand drawings to make it digital, and then convert it into, they take it into AutoCAD and other Adobe tools and convert these diagrams, which was drawn initially by hand, to a digital drawing. That's what normally they do, right? So they always start with freehand drawings. Similarly, engineers should also develop the habit of drawing things. So a drawing is is a skill which is also required for engineers. So that's why we have engineering drawing or engineering graphics in the first year, right? So freehand drawing, they start with freehand drawings, then sketches, illustrations. Then they can convert this into digital form using, they can scan this and then convert it into digital form using Adobe tools or AutoCAD like software, right? And then it can be converted into 2D and 3D drawings using this AutoCAD software, for example. Then design report is a major document which is prepared at the end of the design project. There will be a design report, which is a written document, Embedded, there will be a lot of diagrams. These diagrams you prepare can be embedded in your design report with proper references in the text, right? That's what we do when we prepare the design report. It is not only full text, there will be diagrams embedded in the design report. Or a presentation, then you may also prepare a presentation, PowerPoint presentation, to explain your problem and solutions to a different group of customers, and do a presentation to top management, the main customer stakeholders. You can give a presentation as a designer, which will help you to sell your design and get it accepted by the prospective customers by using a presentation or a presentation. Then, as I said, you can also prove your models, prove your model and see the model solution is going to solve the problem by developing a mathematical model or a proof of concept or a prototype. So models, prototype, and proof of concepts can be used to finally model your solution, may not be in a full scale, in a miniature scale, and try to prove that your solution or concept is going to solve the problem, right? Prototypes are of different levels. Some of the cases it will be the actual functional model, which will be the prototype, which is normally called as prototype. Model will be non-functional model, which is a reduced scale, which may be in a reduced scale. And all this will help us to prove that our solution or concept is going to solve the customer's problem. Proof of concept. So these are the different ways by which designers communicate. Now we'll talk about, we'll go on to one by one. We'll start with communicating designs graphically. How can we communicate the design using diagrams, illustrations, freehand drawings, 2D, 3D diagrams, etc. Communicating designs graphically. So graphics are just visual tools, visual aids. Graphics are normally visual aids. So when people see things, they will be able to understand in a much better way than reading a paragraph of text. Reading a paragraph of text and understanding a thing is difficult, whereas entire thing can be understood in few seconds if you show a diagram, right? That's the power of visual aids. If you communicate something using visual aids, the effect or learning is very fast, and it will remain in memory for a long time if you present a design using a diagram than reading a paragraph by the user. Reading, whatever we read will be retained, only 10% of that will be retained after 2 weeks. Whereas if they see something, they will be able to retain that information, maybe 20%, 30% after 2 weeks, right? So the level will vary based on, there is a person who is called Edgar Dale. He has done research on cognitive abilities of people, how people learn things. So he has found that only 10% of what people read will remain in their mind after 2 weeks. Whereas if they see something, 20% of that will remain in their mind. If they hear something and see something like video, if they watch a video where they see and hear, 30% of that will remain for a long time. And if they participate in a demo, if they watch a demo of a product, demo of something, that will 50% of that will remain in their mind, right? If they see something being done in front of them, right? That will 50% of that will remain in their mind. If they actually involve, if they also start talking, asking questions, 70% of that will remain in their mind. If they talk and involve in an activity, 90% of that will remain in our mind. That's why we teach things, right? When we teach things, a lot of information will remain in our mind for a long time if we teach others. So that is one way of improving the learning skills. If you want to learn something, it is better to teach somebody else what you know, right? That will help us to keep the knowledge in our mind for a long time, right? So visuals, that's the power of visuals. So here we are trying to communicate using visual aids. What cannot be expressed orally or in writing can be very well communicated using visual aids, right? So as I said, designer normally starts off with a freehand drawing and sketches, and then it is converted into CAD drawings like 2D and 3D drawings. That's how it is normally done. 2D drawings, 2D and 3D, there are slight differences in the characteristics. 2D drawings are mainly for showing the details which are required for a manufacturing department. It will show the minute details, including the dimension and the scale, all that will be shown in the 2D drawings, including the materials to be used. Whereas 3D drawings are mainly to visualize the product by the end user. It may not show the details, but 3D drawings will help the end users to visualize the product, or the designer to visualize the product. That's the basic, the purpose is totally different, 2D and 3D drawings. So Vishnu sir, if I make some mistake, please correct me. So I'm not very, okay. So 3D drawings and virtual reality can also be used. Nowadays, virtual reality also helps in showing the three-dimensional view of the product, which will help users to visualize the product, how the product is going to look like. The designers can also use this 3D model, so virtual reality tools to show the final product, how it is going to look like. And visual aids will be effective only if you know how to use it. Visual aids will definitely improve the learning, but if you know how to use it properly, if you don't use it in the right way, it may even kill the end user. If you're not using it in the right way, it may also kill the end user. It will lose the credibility of the designer also, right? It will result in losing the credibility of the designer if you don't use it in the right way. If you have just some diagrams, if it doesn't give enough value addition to the end user, enough information to the end user, there is no value for that diagram. So it is going to, it will result in losing the credibility of the designer, right? So you need to know how to use these visual aids in the right way to make your presentations more powerful and effective. So here we are going to discuss some guidelines for preparing effective visual aids, effective visuals. So whenever you use visuals like diagrams and illustrations and images in textual report, design report, as I said, normally the visuals are embedded in the final written design report. So whenever you embed these visuals in the design report, in the text, you need to refer to the diagram at some point, right? So if there is no references to a diagram, you just put a diagram. Users will not understand what is the purpose of putting that diagram, right? So all the diagrams should be referenced properly in the textual report. And if you have taken this diagram from somewhere, or if you have copied some information from some sources, you need to acknowledge the source and give the reference of the source of data or the figure along with the diagram. And you need to plan carefully where to place these pictures. So if the textual description is in one page and the diagram is in some other page, it is going to be very difficult for the user to look at the diagram when he is trying to read the text, right? So it has to be placed in the appropriate places in the design report. And whenever there is a diagram, you need to show all the information, additional information like units of measure, the scale used, dimension, all that has to be very clearly specified in the diagram. Otherwise, the diagram becomes useless. Label each illustration with an identifying caption and the title. There should be a reference for the diagram as well as a title for the diagram, which has to be referred in the design report. Text. Spell out words rather than using abbreviations. Try to avoid abbreviations and use the full text, the words. And if there are more diagrams, it is always a best practice to include a list of figures in the beginning of the design report. List of figures and the list of tables can be included in the design report if there are many diagrams. And also, as I said, there should be clear labeling and dimensions specified in the illustration or graphics, but too much information will also make the graphics useless. Graphics not attractive, right? If you put a lot of information in the graphics, that will also make the user confuse the user, and they will not understand all the information. So this is an example of a bad illustration where you can see there are no There are no labeling. There is no labeling. People who is going to look at this graph will not know what is there in the x-axis and what is there in the y-axis. You can see some figures. That's all. What is that value, and what is the scale? What is the dimension of that value? What is the unit? Nothing is clear from this diagram. So if you put a diagram like this, it is really useless. It is not going to add value, and the credibility of the designer will be lost, right? So and similarly this diagram, it's a design diagram. You can see it is something like a flask, thermo flask, but you will not be able to understand what each component is. You can see various part of this flask, but it is not very clear what each part is, right? Because there is no labeling in this diagram. Whereas if you look at the same diagram, it is converted with proper labels. You can see this is a diagram, this is a graph showing time versus distance traveled. In the x-axis, you have the time in seconds, and the y-axis, you have the distance traveled in centimeter, right? So in the previous case also, if you look at the scale also, the scale is like 4,000, 8,000, 12,000. Scale is not really proper. Scale is not proper because it is too small. You will not be able to see the details if the scale is like this. But in the reverse diagram, you can see the scale is more minute or smaller. So 4,000, 5,000, 1,000 is one unit is 1,000. One scale is 1,000. So the diagram will be a little bigger, right? And you will be able to see more details. And there is proper labeling of x and y axis. So that's how the diagram should be when you use visual aids and diagrams in reports. Similarly, the flask, now it is labeled properly. So you can understand what each part is, what each component is. It is very clear with this simple labeling, right? So engineering design drawing should have the following essential components. When you look at the diagram, these are the various things you should be able to see in a engineering design drawing. In design drawings could be of different views. There are different views in engineering design drawings. One simple example could be the plan and the elevation, right? Plan and the elevation of a building. Plan is a top view and elevation is the front view, right? That is different views. That is an example of a different view. So you can use different views depending on to whom you are going to present this. Depending on the need of the person, you can have different views of the design drawings, which will show different levels of details, different perspective of the product. And when you use drawings, there are some standard symbols to indicate particular items. I will again take the example of a house plan and elevation, plan of your house, for example, right? So if you look at that diagram, they use some standard symbols. So in the plan, you will not be able to see the door like a door. So in order to indicate there is a door and the window, they use a symbol. So when you understand the symbol, you will be able to know where there is a door here, there is a window here. There is a window here, there is a toilet here. All these you will be able to understand because they use standard symbols to represent different things in the product, different items of the product. So you need to use standard symbols in drawings so that others will be able to easily understand what you mean by those symbols. Clear labeling should be there in the diagrams, and clear and steady lines. Whenever you draw, it should be very clear and steady lines. Dimensions and units should be mentioned in the engineering design drawings. Scale should also be mentioned. Permissible variations and tolerances. So whenever you have some dimensions and units and scaling done for the drawing, there will be some tolerances you need to give for when you actually manufacture or construct that product. There can be a little bit of variations. So what is the permissible variations and tolerance that can be allowed from these dimensions can also be specified in the drawing. Appropriate notes including specifications of materials. If you are going to give it for a manufacturing person or a construction contractor, you need to give the complete details of the design, including the materials to be used, specification of materials to be used. All this has to be mentioned as part of some design drawings. So a title should be there for the drawing, and the designer's name and the date drawn should be there in the design drawing document. We'll see some examples, we will have a few examples of design communication, which is sketches. So this in the module 1, we have looked at some conceptual diagrams. So this is, we talked about in this module 1 also. At the end, there was a section called conceptual diagrams. You will prepare the conceptual diagrams, which is also a graphical representation of your final product. So this is, the first is a conceptual sketch of water purifier. So you can see the various items or various functions, various components in a water purifier. Similarly, the second diagram is for a conceptual sketch of an automatic can crusher. Automatic can crusher conceptual diagram. This is one way of, this is one level of diagram. This may be useful for a user, normal user who is not very techno savvy, will be able to see how the product is going to look like, something like that. It is not enough for a manufacturing person. Manufacturing person should need more details about this, different components. This is another AutoCAD diagram for a house 3D perspective view of a 3D view of a house done in AutoCAD, for example. So here also the purpose is different. This is to visualize the product. This is not for the construction people or the contractor. There is no dimensions here. So it's a 3D drawing. The purpose is slightly different. So if it is a 2D drawing, we will show all the dimensions and details and the scales in the 2D drawing, whereas in a 3D, the purpose is to visualize the product. This is an example of a 2D drawing where you have details about, this is a stapler, exploded view of a stapler. This is required for a manufacturing unit. Manufacturing unit is going to manufacture stapler. So this shows various components, so various parts that a stapler is composed of various parts. So this diagram will list out various parts and bill of material for that component. This shows the bill of materials for a particular product, which is required for the manufacturing department. This is another diagram, detailed drawing diagram for a screwdriver handle. For a screwdriver handle, you can see with all the details of dimension and the material to be used, all that. Material is also there. The cast acrylic material is also mentioned here. Dimensions are mentioned. You can see some symbols are used. If you see this symbol, that indicates diameter, right? Am I right? Vishnu sir, this indicates diameter. So they use some standard symbols to represent various parameters. So a designer or engineer looking at this diagram should be able to understand those symbols. So that way you will be able to understand what the design is all about. Now, so we have completed communicating designs graphically, right? One part of the module 3. Was that okay?
Yes.
Yes, you are right, sir.
Okay. So we'll continue. Yes. Divya Miss. Divya Miss, are you there?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, like.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
ഞാനും പുതിയതായിട്ട് പഠിച്ചു വരുന്നേ ഉള്ളൂ. ഇതുവരെ എനിക്ക് പുതിയതായിട്ടൊന്നും തോന്നിയില്ല. ഇറ്റ്സ് ഫൈൻ.
മിസ് ഇത് പ്രിപ്പയർ ചെയ്തതാണല്ലോ കുറെയൊക്കെ, അപ്പോൾ അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ ചോദിക്കുന്നത്.
യെസ് സർ, ഇറ്റ്സ് ഫൈൻ.
Okay. So we'll continue communicating designs in writing. So a formal technical design report is usually written at the end of a design project. So when you complete a design project, there should be a design report, right? So I think we can also give the second assignment as preparing a design report for the problem. You might have given some problem, right? Or you can give a problem and come up with the entire design and prepare a design report as the second assignment. We can give that immediately after the exam. They will take some time. So you can give some time to prepare this design report at the end of the course. That can be taken as the assignment 2. So I have given a problem for assignment 1 also. I have split it into teams and give one problem to each team. And they have gone through the design process. In module 1, there are different stages, right? They are going through the different stages of the design process for solving that particular problem by a team of 6 people. I divided into 6 members. So they have submitted the first assignment with output from each stage of the design process. That was the first assignment I gave. So I'm planning to give the same assignment and apply the design thinking, module 2, design thinking, and produce the artifacts based on the design thinking, the 3 stages, inspiration, ideation, and implementation. So they will be developing some user persona, customer journey map, and all that. And the brainstorming, they will be doing the brainstorming and come up with the alternative designs. They will choose that. All that will be done. And finally, I'll ask them to write a report, design report, following whatever we are going to discuss in module 3, right? So the design 2, module 2 and module 3 will be combined as a second assignment. So it will take some time. You can give some maybe 3 weeks time. So immediately after the exam, you can give that assignment. So they will start working on that. Finally, they will submit a final design report that can be assessed for the assignment 2. That's what I have in mind. You can also follow the same, or you can have a different approach also, no problem. Yeah.
Ma'am, sir, is it the same problem? That is the first for the same.
ഞാൻ അത് തന്നെയാണ് കൊടുക്കാൻ ഉദ്ദേശിക്കുന്നത്. ഒരു
Okay,
ടീം
same thing.
എന്നിട്ട് ഡിസൈൻ ഇപ്പൊ അവർ ആദ്യം നമ്മൾ മോഡ്യൂൾ 1ന്റെ അപ്രോച്ചാണ് ഫോളോ ചെയ്തത്. മറ്റേ 8 സ്റ്റേജസ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ. മോഡ്യൂൾ 1ലെ ഡിസൈൻ പ്രോസസ് ഡിഫറെന്റ് സ്റ്റേജസ്. അപ്പോൾ they have prepared the objective tree prepare ചെയ്തു, functional structure prepare ചെയ്തു, morphological chart ഉണ്ടാക്കി, അതെല്ലാം ചെയ്തായിരുന്നു അവർ ഓൾറെഡി. Now I am going to ask them to apply the design thinking approach in the second module പഠിച്ച കാര്യം. സെയിം പ്രോബ്ലത്തിന് ഡിസൈൻ തിങ്കിങ് അപ്രോച്ച് അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്തിട്ട് ആ ഡിസൈൻ തിങ്കിങ്ങിൽ നമ്മൾ മോഡ്യൂൾ 2ൽ പഠിച്ച ആർട്ടിഫാക്ട്സ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ പറയും. So they have to empathize with the customer and try to understand the problem in a much better way and produce that user persona, customer journey map. All that will be prepared for the same problem. And then alternative designs, alternative solutions will be brainstormed, and finally choose that the best solution. All that whatever we discussed in the module 2. And then ഇപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഇവിടെ പറയാൻ പോകുന്ന ഡിസൈൻ റിപ്പോർട്ടിന്റെ ഫോർമാറ്റ് ഒക്കെ നമ്മൾ ഇതിൻ്റെ അകത്ത് പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ ആ ഫോർമാറ്റിൽ ഈ ആർട്ടിഫാക്ട് എല്ലാം കൂടെ കമ്പൈൻ ചെയ്ത് ഈ റിപ്പോർട്ട് ഉണ്ടാക്കി അവസാനം സബ്മിറ്റ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും.
Okay.
As the assignment 2. That's what I have in mind.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So then it is a complete standalone document written for people who have widely diverse backgrounds. So as I said, the customers of a designer is varying of diverse backgrounds, different departments. So the design report is intended for all these people. So all these people should have the necessary information in a design report. All the information may not be relevant for a particular category of users, but whatever information required by a category should be available in the design report. So it should be a standalone report document, which should be useful for all the end users, all the customers. So this is the overall outcome design report template, which I have taken from the first reference book, I think. First reference book, which was used in module 1 also. So that book contains the format of the design report. I have taken this slightly modified from DVMS presentation, I think. So there will be a cover page, title of the report, name of the authors, organization name and address, summary. Summary says the work and should also include a short conclusion. So summary is the content some people may read. Some people will, like top executive, CEO, may not read the entire design report, right? So they would be reading only the summary part or abstract, right? To understand what this document is all about, right? So the summary should give enough information for a person at the higher level to understand what the design is all about, right? So summarizes the work and should also include a short conclusion about the work. This section needs to stand alone, as this may be the only section some people read, like sponsor and the top executives. Then the table of contents, and you can have the list of figures and list of tables if there are many figures and tables. Then introduction. Introduction should give a background of the problem, right? Background of the problem, background of the work and the market analysis, and the need for to acquaint with the reader with the problems and the purpose of carrying out this work should be very clearly described in the introduction, background, and the intention or the purpose of doing this project and problems you are trying to solve. Describe the system or the situation under investigation, provide a brief statement of the specific problems to be solved, and summarize the needs of the potential clients or users in terms of the corresponding goals that are sought in the optimal design solutions. Right. So again, here somebody may read only the introduction part. So they should be able to understand the background, problems you are trying to solve, and what are the different needs of clients you are trying to address. All that should be very clear from this introduction section. Now the design process. What is the process you have followed to arrive at the final solution has to be explained. Details of the procedure followed in the design process. So this will come from module 1. Module 1, you have, the students know what is the design process, what are the different stages. So based on that understanding, they can write this. Based on that, they will be doing this design process. So whatever they have done to arrive at the final solution can be explained under this section, design process. Now, alternative solutions and concept developed. I have made some customization here from the standard report template given in the reference book, because in another book, this was the template. So I just combined two templates given in two books and made it whichever I find more less confusing and more clear. I combined it and made this section. So then you need to present what are the alternative solutions you considered for solving the problem. So you need not give all the details of alternative solutions, but whoever is going to read this section should understand what are the different alternatives you have considered, how each alternative is going to work. Should be clear from this section. It should not be the complete detail of all the alternative solutions. So here you need to give enough information so that people who are going to read this should be able to understand what are the different alternatives you have considered. And the next section, and out of this you will select one solution as the final solution. One or multiple solution combined as the final solution, and that will be the next section, final design solution. Here you will give the entire details, all drawings, all diagrams will be included in this section, final design solution. This section may be divided into several subsections and shall include the following details. Summary of the evaluation and the alternative solutions. How did you evaluate those alternative solutions, and what was the criteria for choosing the final solution? All that has to be explained, like decision matrix or whose evaluation matrix. All that you might have used for evaluating alternatives, right? All that can be given here also as the initial beginning of this section. And justify your decision on selecting the final solution with supporting arguments and data. And strengths and weaknesses of the final solution. What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of the final solution selected? Technical analysis and design details. This is here. This is where you are going to put all your diagrams, graphical diagrams, sketches, design drawings. All this will be under this section. Details of construction of the artifact. So how are we going to manufacture this product? What are the details required for construction of this product or manufacturing of this product, like materials, bill of materials, what are the type of materials to be used? All that information can be given. Along with it, what is the process to be followed while constructing the product? All that can be explained here. Equipments and tools to be used for producing this product, that can be used. Assembly and setup procedures for assembling this product, experimental setups and result, testing the product, how do we test, what is the setup required for testing, and the result, test result, details of the final result. All this can be included in this particular section. Economic financial evaluations of the design, feedback table summarizing the reactions of various groups of customers, potential users, manufacturing department, all that, if available, can be included. Conclusion, this section concisely state the conclusions that can be drawn from the work. Comment on whether the final solution satisfies the original design goals that were sought. So you need to prove, you need to conclude, and you need to convince or justify that your original requirement, needs of the customer, is addressed by the final solution, has to be justified as part of your conclusion also. Also identify the risk associated with the implementation of the solution, if any. So also if there are any risks associated with the implementation of the solution, that can be also given in the conclusion, and then you can have the recommendation for the future enhancements, such as further work or improvements that could or should be performed on this design, development, and implementation in future. Further improvements that can be done can also be included as recommendations, right? So this is the general structure of a design report, which is communicating the designs in writing, right? So assignment 2, if we can give this, that will help them to make the entire thing. So when I gave the first assignment, I did not give this report format and all. I asked them to prepare all these outputs from different stages and put it in a single document, PDF, and submit it. So they just put diagrams, and somebody might have written some 1 or 2 lines of sentences for each diagram. That's all. They do not follow a standard structure. Now I'm going to ask them to convert the entire thing as a formal report, design report, what they are going to study in the module 3. And references can be added at the end, and appendices. Appendices are the additional information that will not fit in the main body, like additional technical data. If you have collected something which is not directly related to your solution, but which you have referred, for example, that can be added as appendix. Journal articles, patent information you collected from other sources, similar patterns, that information you collected, which helped you to go about the design. All that which is not directly related to your product, but which you have used in various ways to arrive at the final solution, those data can be added as appendices. Appendices can be many, appendix A, B, C, depending on various category of information you are going to have in the appendix. And steps in writing a report. The 5 operations involved in the writing of a high quality report are best remembered with the acronym POWER. That is also given in the reference book. Plan the writing of the report. Outline the report. Outline, we have already seen what's the outline of a report. So we need to decide what are the different sections and contents required in the report. And then write various sections of the report. Review and edit the report. And finally, rewrite the report based on the review comments if required. Reviews missed out in this POWER. Review is very important actually. Once you write, somebody has to review and give feedback. Based on that, you refine. You edit and rewrite and refine the report. So review is an important activity, but which is missed in this acronym POWER. Some of the attributes of good writing are write as objectively as possible. So whenever you write a design report, should not your emotions and because it is your baby, you are trying to design write a report for the design you have made. So you will always try to make it as a good design without objectively looking at it, right? Sometimes. So you don't want to you want others to see that design is bad. So we'll try to hide some details which is not really good to be public, right? That should not be the mentality, right? So write as objectively as possible. What is that you have come up with? Explain it objectively, and show all the strengths and weaknesses. Everything has to be written. Do not become emotionally involved or attached to a problem or a solution. Be reasonably methodical. Structure should be there. Record whatever is learned and whatever work is performed. Always strive for clarity in writing and keep it simple and straightforward. Deliver the written material on time. That is also important. Deliver on the due date. Effectively, some of the attributes of good reports are delivered on the due date. Effectively answer readers' questions as they arise. So when the readers read the design report, when they read something, they should have some questions coming in the mind. So when they read further, those questions should be answered in the design report itself, right? So that should be the way of writing the design report. So whenever you read information, you may get some doubt or questions. How are we going to solve this problem? We should be there in the same design report elsewhere, right? Or immediately after that. Whenever you have some questions coming up in your mind, that should be answered in the design report itself. Give a good first impression. Whenever somebody looks at the design report, it should give a good impression about the design report. Read coherently. There should be logical order in the design report so that you should be able to read like a story, right, with proper connection and logical order. Contain an effective summary and conclusion, are written clearly and concisely, and avoid vague or superfluous statements and phrases. Should be very clear and ambiguous. Provide all pertinent information that is relevant for your design has to be provided in the design report. So mechanics of writing, following suggestions will help you avoid some of the most common mistakes in your writing. Paragraph structure. Each paragraph should begin with a topic sentence that provides an overall understanding of the paragraph, right? Each paragraph can start with a topic sentence, which will provide an overall understanding what is there in the paragraph. Each paragraph should have a single theme or conclusion, and the topic sentence states that theme or conclusion. Each paragraph should be separated in such a way that each paragraph will have a theme, and that theme is explained by the first statement, the topic statement, sentence. And sentence length should be kept as short as possible, should not be long sentences, which will make understanding difficult for the readers. Long sentences become complex and prone to grammatical. Similarly, if you make bigger sentences, definitely there will be grammatical mistakes, and it will be very difficult for others to understand what you mean by the sentence, right? And it also takes long time and also slows the reader. They will not be able to read fast if the sentences are very big, because they will not be able to understand easily. Pronouns, avoid the use of pronouns like it, like this, like it, this, that. It may be clear for the designer who is writing it, but sometimes you say it or this or that. Others who are reading the document will not understand what you mean by it or this or that, right? So instead of that, use proper nouns, right? Instead of using it or this or that. Similarly, don't use I, you, he or she, mine, our, us in a design report, which is a general document. So try to avoid the use of such pronouns, he or she or my or our or us, right? We will have a tendency to use that definitely in some sentences, but try to avoid such words, pronouns. Spelling and punctuation has to be corrected. Errors and these basic elements of writing are inexcusable in the final draft of the report. So draft has to be checked for spelling and the grammar mistakes and punctuation mark problems. All that has to be corrected. That you can get the help of the Word itself. It will prompt you wherever there are mistakes. So whenever you complete, you need to review it, correct all these grammatical and spelling errors, highlighted by the Word software itself, and correct it. Then give it for review for other people, and they will also find mistakes and give feedback and review comments. Based on that, you again modify that. And use of tense, past tense, describe the work. Whatever work you have done already can be explained using past tense, right? When you are building or designing, whatever work you did can be explained using past tense. Use in reference to items or ideas in the present report, use present tense. So whatever you are going to present as a solution in the report, use present tense, right? Future tense, use in making predictions from the data or result that will be applicable in the future, use future tense. The main method of now we have completed communicating designs in writing. We are moving to the next topic, communicating designs orally by doing a presentation. That is also very important. Normally, main communication happens through presentations. In a company, once the design is over, you may have to present this design to all the stakeholders using a PPT, PowerPoint presentation, using visual aids. PowerPoint is a visual aid. Using visual aids, you need to present this to all the stakeholders, top management, customer, end users, and different category of customers will be there in the presentation. And success of your design depends on how effective your presentation is, oral presentation is. They will not be able to read, and many of them will not read the design report. They will not have time and patience to go through the 200-page report you have prepared, right? That's the main work you have done. But you should be able to explain your solution in 1 hour to all those people using a presentation, because they will not be able to read your report. So effectiveness of the presentation decides the success of your design. So that is very, very important. So the designer, engineer should be able to know how to present their solution and ideas. That's what is done in this topic. The main method of oral communication is presentation and speech. So designers and engineers should be able to sell their ideas by effectively presenting their designs to other people. Every presentation should have an objective which may vary from one presentation to other. So depending on the audience, for example, sometimes you may not be giving one presentation to all the different stakeholders. You may give different presentations to different group of customers or different stakeholders. So depending on the audience to whom you are presenting, the content may vary. The way of presenting may vary. The examples you use may vary. The words, language you use may vary, depending on the audience. So you need to know the audience to whom you are presenting, and based on that, the objective may be different, the content may be different, the way of presenting may be different. Presenters should be aware about the audience and their education level, education skill level, and customize the presentation accordingly. Use appropriate tools such as slides, PowerPoint presentation slides, models. You can also show a model, demo of your product during the presentation. That will make your presentation more powerful. That will help you to get the acceptance of the model or design, right? So along with the presentation, you can also show something. As I said, Edgar Dale did research on how people learn, right? So when people see something being demonstrated in front of them, they will be able to retain that information for a long time. So that is an effective way of communicating, presenting your design. Show the model itself. If it is a working functional prototype, show that during the presentation itself. Transparencies, audiovisual aids, and the web. Keep the presentation within the time allotted. Always presentations start on time, end on time. So there will be a lot of obstacles when you go for a presentation. A normal tendency for the people to come for the presentation. So that you can see in every training, people don't like to sit for a long time, right? That's a problem, right? And these are the different obstacles you may find in people. So people will resist change, and also they don't want to change. They don't like to change. They would like to continue as it is, right? Without any change, without any improvement. If there is no change, there is no improvement, right? So when you do something new, design something new, they know they are going to, it is going to make a change in their organization, for example, right? So many people will try to resist it. So it is your challenge to get it accepted by the people who are trying to resist, right? Humans like familiar method, and their change requires some additional effort. So they don't like to put that additional effort for this change you are trying to introduce by designing this product. So it becomes your challenge to accept this design by those people who resist. That's why the power of presentation is very, very important. So this may be the reactions from people sometimes. We tried before. They may say that, oh, we had tried this before, it did not work, right? They might have tried something else, right? So it becomes your responsibility to prove that what you tried is different and this is different. It is a too radical change. We have never done that before. So they may say that we have not done that before. So what? You can do it, right? So it becomes the designer's responsibility to convince that they can do, they will be able to adapt to the new change without any problem. All that you need to convince them. Get back to reality. They may say that it will not work here. It may work somewhere else, but it will not work here. I have heard this sentence from customers. So your product may be working in other places, but our environment is different, our process is different, our procedure is different. Straight away they tell without understanding what is there in the product, right? So they may say that it will not work. Here in our environment, it will not work. So it becomes your responsibility to convince them and get it accepted. We have always done it this way. I don't like the idea. All these are the reactions of people who will be attending your presentations. So the challenge is to beat all this and get your presentation idea solution accepted by the people who are listening to your presentation. And you know, when you do a presentation, only 7% of words you talk communicate. Remaining communication happens in non-verbal means. Verbally, using words, you communicate only 7% of message. Remaining 93% happens through non-verbal means. Out of that, 38% will be through voice inflections. Tone of your voice, pitch of your voice, volume of your voice, communicate a lot of things, 38%. And 55% message getting transmitted from your facial expressions and body language. That's what people have done research and found this, right? So only 7% of what you say is communicating. Only 7% of message is communicated through words. Remaining happens through non-verbal, voice inflections and facial expressions and body language. So when you do a presentation, it is very, very important to be careful about your body language, about your facial expressions, your voice, your volume of your voice, the pitch of your voice, tone of your voice. All that is very, very important, right? Not only the words you speak. So that has to be very clear for the designer when he is going for a presentation. Or a presentation do's and don'ts. Know your audience thoroughly. Never read solely from slides and notes. Catch the attention of the audience in the first few minutes. Opening of your presentation is very, very important. Opening. So normally people say that 7% of the total time available for the presentation can be used for the opening. For example, if it is a 30-minute presentation, 2 minutes can be used for the opening. And that 2 minutes is very, very important. That is where you are trying to catch the attention of the audience. So that 2 minutes has to be used very effectively, wisely. Then only you will be able to catch the attention. If you miss that 2 minutes, rest of the presentation will not be accepted by the users. If you can catch the attention, grab the attention of the users within the 2 minutes of opening your presentation and do it very effectively, rest of the presentation will be like a cakewalk. Otherwise, rest will be very difficult. It will be very challenging for you to continue the presentation if the 2 minutes is not used effectively. So that is very, very important. Stay within the time allotted, include relevant examples, anecdotes, stories, and jokes. Depending on the audience to whom you are giving the presentation, you need to vary these examples. The examples you cite to students could be totally different from you do the same presentation to a faculty member. When you do the same presentation to a professional group in the software company, the examples you cite could be totally different. The words you use will be different. The language you use will be different. Stories will be different. All that will be different. So you need to customize your presentation based on the audience. Avoid using technical jargons which audience may not know. Always avoid using technical jargons, idioms and phrases has to be avoided because other people may not understand all these acronyms, jargons and idioms and phrases may not be understood by other people, especially the people from other cultures will not even understand. Some of your jargons, some of your idioms will not be understood by other country people, right? Know your stuff, prepare well for your presentation. Even if you have done the design, you need to prepare well before you go for the presentation. Practice, practice, practice. Before you go for the presentation, practice. That is very, very important. The dry run, you do a rehearsal of your presentation in front of your friends or other colleagues who are very close to you before you go for the final presentation. So that will help you to clear all the problems in delivery, organization, and timing of your presentation. So once you are ready, practice several times and ready, do a rehearsal in front of some of your friends. That will help you to clear out all the delivery issues, organization of the presentation, logical ordering can be corrected. If the others are not able to understand the logical order, if they say that it can be done like the switch, these two areas can be switched like this. Based on that, you can reorganize the logical order or the timing can be adjusted to complete it within the allotted time. Speak confidently but not aggressively. Maintain eye contact with the audience members and keep shifting the eye contact to the talk. So when you are going to give a presentation to a small group, ensure that you have eye contact with each individual in the group, small group. If it is a big group, 200 people, it is not practical to have eye contact with each individual person. In that case, the best way is to select 3 focal points. Left, 1 focal point on the left side, 1 on the center, and 1 on the right side. And you keep on shifting this focus one after the other, left, middle, right, and then come back. And you look at the forehead of the people sitting in that corner, left side. And they will feel like you are looking at each of them, right? So that you need to keep on switching this eye contact. Never talk to the board or to the empty space. Never turn back to the audience. If you want to write something to the board, and if it is difficult to face the audience and write, you can write in the normal way, but don't talk while you are writing. While you are writing, don't talk. And you finish writing, then turn back and then talk about that, right? Otherwise, they will not hear anything. If you turn back and talk, they will not hear anything. And it is not good to turn back also. If you can write without turning back, that is well and good, but it sometimes it is difficult for some people. So in that case, you can write, but when you talk, you turn back and talk. Present the material in a logical order. A logical presentation is much more critical in an oral one than in a written document. Design report, even if it is logical order is slightly missing, it is there, the material is there. People will be able to reread and understand the design, understand the concept, even if it is not in the proper order. But in the presentation, it is very important that you present it in the logical order. Otherwise, they will not be able to understand. Once you complete the presentation, that is finished. After that, whatever information you have conveyed during the presentation is there in the minds of people. If the message is not delivered in the proper logical order, they will not be able to understand and your presentation is over. And further, they will not be able to understand even after that. But if it is a written document, they have the document, they can reread and understand, right? Even if there is a mistake in the logical ordering of the content in the written report. So it is very important in the oral presentation, logical order. And be sincere and professional. Whenever you do a presentation, be sincere and professional. And following points will help you to make your oral presentation effective as possible. Use visual aids. As I said, use visual aids in the proper way. If you don't use it in the right way, it will kill the audience, as well as it will result in losing the credibility of the presenter, right? So there is a word, if you Google, you will get a word called death by PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. If you don't know how to use PowerPoint and visual aids in the right way, it will definitely kill the audience and it will also result in losing the credibility of the presenter. Sketches, graph, drawings, all this can be used to convey the information more effectively. Limit slides to not more than 1 per minute. Here it says 1 per minute, but the standard rule is, there is a rule called 10-20-30 rule. 10-20-30 rule. If you have 20 minutes for the presentation, only 10 slides. 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30 is for the font size. If the font size should be more than 30. That's the rule, 10-20-30 rule. 10 slides, 20 minutes, and 30 font size. Each slide should contain one idea. Each slide should have only one main point, one main idea. And there can be 6 sub-points, 6 bullet points in one main slide. Each slide will convey main idea, one main idea, which can be split into 6 points, 6 bullet points. Each bullet point should have 6 words. There is another rule, 1-6-6. One main idea per slide, 6 bullet points, and 6 words per bullet point. That's the 1-6-6 rule. Bullet points should not be too lengthy. It should be short, 6 words. The first slide should show the title of your presentation and names of the collaborators. The second slide should give a brief outline of the presentation. And the last slide should summarize the message you just delivered. There should be a conclusion and summary at the end. And there should be references also and the thank you for not all that. If you need to show a slide more than once, use a second copy. Avoid leaving a slide on the screen if you have finished discussion on the topic. So if you have finished discussion on the topic, don't leave that slide and keep talking about something else. Slide is different, whatever you talk is different. Whatever you talk should be consistent with what is there on the screen. Never read directly from the slides. Spoken word should complement the slides. In the slides, you will have only short bullet points. The explanation should come from the presenter. Explanation should come from the presenter. It should not be complete details, should not be put in the presentation. Only bullet points. And the explanation should come from the presenter. And you can have notes prepared along with each slide. And the bottom, you can have the notes prepared. You can use that for explaining each point. Use graphs and use graphs to explain trends and variations. If you want to explain some trends, it is better to show as a graph. Clearly label axes, data, and the title. Acknowledge the source. Begin the presentation with the problem. Begin with the presentation of the problem, followed by the design process, solutions, alternative solutions, and the final solution selected, and the conclusion and the recommendation. That should be the order. Finish ahead of schedule and be prepared for a question and answer session. There should be a time given for the participants to ask questions about your design. That is very, very important. You need to keep aside this question and answer session at the end, or you can ask them to put forward the question during the presentation also if you are comfortable in doing that. Answering the question in between. You can, in the beginning itself, you can tell whether they need to keep the questions till end or they are allowed to interrupt the presenter and ask questions in between. That has to be communicated in the beginning of the presentation itself as a guideline or rule. Question answers allow the audience to complete the question before answering. Sometimes audience start asking question immediately, the presenters start answering without listening to the entire question. Listen to the question carefully and then answer if you know the answer. If you don't know the answer, don't beat around the bush. Tell them you are not able to answer the question right now. You will explore and come back with the answer, right? Don't answer specific to the question. If you don't know the answer, don't beat around the bush. Go back and explore and come back with the answer to the audience, complete audience. You will say you will come back to email to all the audience with the answer. Avoid being argumentative. Don't try to argue with the participants, right? Even if they ask a stupid question, don't ridicule the participants and laugh at them. Do not argument with the participants. Be polite, right? Do not let the questioner feel that the question is stupid. Even if they ask a stupid question, don't ridicule and laugh at them. Adjourn the meeting if the questions are dragging. You can finish the meeting in time. Thank the audience on the final time after the Q&A session. You need to thank the audience because they are putting their time and effort to listen to your presentation. So you need to be grateful to the audience and you need to express that gratefulness at the end of the session. For your presentation, this is a presentation I usually used to do when I was working in the industry for my team members. I will skip this and come back if time is there. Otherwise, I will skip. Now, prototype models and proof of concepts. Prototype is another way model. Prototype is another way to make your presentation more beautiful. As I said, during the presentation itself, you can demonstrate the prototype and model. So what's the difference between prototype and models? Prototypes are working models of designed artifacts. Prototypes are normally the working models of designed artifact. They are tested in the same operating environment in which they are expected to function as the final product. So the prototype will be tested in the same environment in which the final product will be deployed, right? That is what is called prototype in the normal design terminology. But if you look at the software industry, prototype is slightly different. In the software, prototype is need not be a working model. Need not be a working model. In majority of the cases, it will not be a working model. It is just a non-functional model, like wireframes, screens, and the report made using wireframe with logical linking, right? That's all in the case of software, which you can, which is a model as per the normal design terminology. Model is a non-functional representation of your final product, need not be in the same scale as the original product, and need not be using the same technology and the materials for making the model. But prototype will be normally made using the same technology and the materials, and it has to operate in the same environment. That's the difference between model and a prototype. So model comes first. Model comes first and then the prototype. They are also defined as the first full scale and usually functional forms of a new type or design of a construction. The original models on which something is patterned. So this is where these are the prototype as a functional model, which is going to be the pattern of the final product, right? A model is a miniature representation of something or a pattern of something to be made, or an example for imitation or emulation. It need not be functional. It is not normally functional. Models are used to represent some devices or processes. It could be, for example, paper models or computer models or physical models made using some other material. Need not be using the same material as the final product. So models are usually smaller. Scale, there will be a scaling, maybe 1:100 model. So your building model will be 1:100 normally, right? So 1 meter will be represented using 1 centimeter when you make a model of your building. So that's a non-functional model, smaller, made of different materials than the original artifact they represent. And they are typically tested in a laboratory environment, uncontrolled, in a controlled environment, not the actual environment in which the final product is going to be used. And they will be testing in a lab environment or controlled environment to validate their expected behavior. The models will be tested in a controlled or lab environment. So that's the difference between prototypes and models. Prototypes are intended to demonstrate that the product will function as designed, so they are tested in their actual operating environment or in similar uncontrolled environments that are as close to their relevant real worlds as possible. For example, an airplane prototype is made of the same materials. If we are going to make a prototype of the airplane, it will be made of the same materials as that of the final plane, and has the same shape and the size and the configuration as they intend to fly. The prototype will be exactly functional model of your plane. Whereas if you are going to make a model of your airplane, it will be different. Models are intentionally tested in controlled environments that allow the model builder and the designer to understand the particular behavior or phenomenon that is being modeled. Right. So, for example, a model airplane would likely be much smaller. You will make a much smaller version of the airplane, which you are going to build. It might be flown not in the actual environment, in the air. You will be testing it in a controlled environment, maybe using a wind tunnel for testing whether your design will work, right? For sheer enjoyment or for sheer enjoyment, right? So the models are not the final real functional representation of your final product. It is done as a miniature version of your final product, which can be tested in a controlled environment to validate whether your design is going to work, to predict whether your design is going to work. When do we build a prototype and model? So the decision to build a prototype depends on the size and the type of the design space. The cost of building the prototype has to be considered before you decide to go ahead with the prototype. Ease of building the prototype, whether it is easy to build the prototype. So what is the purpose, role that a full-size prototype that may play in ensuring the widespread acceptance of a new design? Whether you're building a prototype will help you to get the acceptance of the final product from the customer. If that's the case, you may go with prototyping and show that to the customer and get the acceptance before you build the final product. Number of copies of the final artifact that are expected to be made or built. If there are a lot of final product to be built, then it is a wise decision to make a prototype, right? If it is only one product that is going to be the final, making a prototype may not be viable financially. It may cost the same thing. It may cost the same cost as the final product, right? It is going to be the functional model. In that case, it may not be viable. Whereas if there are going to be millions of products to be made from this prototype, based on this prototype, it is always better to go ahead with the prototype first and test it and then confirm before you go for mass manufacturing. Building models and prototype, try to ask these questions before deciding to build a prototype or model. What do we want to learn from the model or prototype? Who is going to make it? Do we have the internal expertise to make it? What parts or components can be bought from outside? What can be made inside? How and from what it is going to be made? How much will it cost? All these questions to be answered before you decide to go with it, building a prototype or a model. And true prototypes are typically made from the same materials that are intended for the final design. This material, and even if you make the same material as per the design for the prototype, while testing the prototype, based on the feedback and the result, you may change the material, right? That is possible. Most probably you will continue with the same thing, but if the test fails, and based on the test result and the feedback from the testing, if there is a need to change the material, you may change that. Otherwise, normally it will be the same. A model, on the other hand, can be constructed from whatever material will assist in answering the questions for which the model was designed to pose. So in the case of model, the purpose of the model, if it is going to meet with some other low-cost material, you will use that low-cost material. Your purpose is to meet some objective for the model. So if it is going to meet the objective, you may use a low-cost material to make the model, may not go for a costly material. The most common materials for model construction are paper, cardboard, wood, plywood, polymer, PVC, ABS, polystyrene, and acrylic, aluminum, mild steel. All that can be used for making models and prototype. There are many options for constructing prototype. You can use mockups. Mockups is a main thing in the software industry. We make mockups of screens and reports. One option for making basic models or prototypes is to consider mockup of a 3D part from 2D cutouts. So even in the hardware product, you can make a mockup. You can make 3D models. You make 3D, 2D, and combine that to make a 3D model. Can be made using V-nail cutter or laser cutter. You have Fab Lab, and so all that facilities can be used to make the models. So material use could be any of this. Machine shop and the workshop can be used for making your prototypes. Woodworking machines in the the carpentry shop can be used. Metal working can be done in the machining shop. Fab Lab and the workshop can be used for making prototypes. Rapid prototyping is something like from CAD files, from once you design the CAD drawings, 3D drawings, so which can be easily converted into physical models directly from the electronic data, right? There are tools for that, like 3D printing. 3D printing is a mechanism which will help you to convert your drawings directly to a physical three-dimensional model. That is called as another terminology, additive layer manufacturing, because 3D printing is done layer by layer, right? You give that drawing, AutoCAD drawing, for example, of different layers, and each layer will be printed one after the other. That's how it is made, additive layer manufacturing. And wireframing and screen mockup tools are the primary prototyping tools used in the software industry. There are a lot of tools, free and open, free as well as licensed tools are there: Figma, Balsamiq, Fluid UI, Adobe XD, Lumsy, GoMockingbird.com, Pencil, Draw.io. All these are tools used in the software industry for making the prototype of software, wireframes, or screen mockup. Software design modeling tools can be used to model the software. So in the case of software, the prototype and the model, there are two things. Both are non-functional. Model is a diagram. Model is diagrammatic representation of your software, and wireframing is the look and feel of the software, again non-functional. So these are some examples of models and prototype using paper, hardwood, and thermocol and all that. For some examples of prototype. This is a prototype wireframe for a software product, software wireframing. And proof of concept is another way to prove that your model is going to work or your concept is going to work. There's some part of a design that is usually specified to test whether a particular concept will actually work as proposed. In proof of concept testing, controlled experiments are designed and executed to prove or disapprove a concept based on the outcome. So when you test this proof of concept, it is done in a lab environment or a controlled environment, and to prove whether your concept is going to solve the problem based on the result that you get from the testing of your proof of concept. Yes. So in software development also proof of concept is used. For example, a proof of concept would show whether an idea is feasible from a technology standpoint. That's where proof of concept POC is used in software industry. Suppose there is a complex functionality to be developed in a software product. Before you go ahead with the actual development in the design stage itself, you will try to do a proof of concept, POC for that particular function, not for the entire product. You will take that functionality and develop a proof of concept to test whether it is feasible in the current technology, in the current level of technology, whether the current technology can be used to solve that particular problem of a particular component. That is what is done in software to ensure that whether it is feasible in the present with the present technology. For startups, a proof of concept would demonstrate financial viability. For a startup, the proof of concept could be for the entire business viability. They will try to make this proof of concept and try selling it and get profit and see whether it is financially feasible. The business model is financially feasible. That can be tested using a proof of concept in the case of a startup. A proof of concept plan could address how the proposed product or service will support organizational goals, objectives, or other business requirements. So proof of concept process should include clearly defined criteria for success. Before you go ahead with testing your proof of concept, you need to clearly define what's the criteria for success of testing. What is the criteria for success of testing? And if the criteria doesn't match, if the result doesn't match with the criteria, then it is a failure. So you need to clearly define the criteria for success, document how the proof of concept will be carried out. Evaluation component. So what are the things you are going to test as part of proof of concept? And proposal for how to move forward should the POC prove to be successful, right? So you need to clearly define the criteria and document how you are going to, how the proof of concept will be carried out, and what's the evaluation criteria, what's the evaluation component, which are the components you are going to test to see whether the criteria for success is met. Then if it is successful, how do we go about proceeding with the development? Mathematical modeling and design, that's the last part. Mathematics and physics are very much part of the design process. And mathematics and physics give underlying principles, basic principles and concepts. We base our designs on those principles provided by mathematics and physics. So that is also very important. And mathematical models will help you to prove whether your solution is going to predict whether your solution is going to work or not. You can represent your systems and devices as a mathematical expression and prove that your solution is going to work using that expression, solving that expression, for example, right? That's what is done in mathematical modeling. So I'm not very strong in this area. I try to learn it from Divya ma'am's presentation and convert it into a little, I just reduced it. We can represent the behavior and function of real devices in mathematical terms, and which will help you to prove whether your device and system is going to work. For example, every new airplane or building represents a model based on prediction. So you can prove that the plane will fly based on some mathematical and physical principles by modeling, right? Similarly, you say that the building will not fall down based on some mathematical principle and model, right? That's what you are trying to do. Methods and so mathematical modeling is as an activity with underlying principles, methods, and tools. These principles, methods, and tools help to address following questions during the modeling process. Why do we need to model? What will we use to use the model for? What's the purpose of using the model? What do we want to find with this model? What data is available? What data is not available? What are the assumptions can we take? How should we develop this model? What are the appropriate physical principle we need to apply to develop the model? All this has to be answered before you go ahead with developing a mathematical model. So what will our model predict? Can we verify the model's predictions? Are our calculations correct? Are the predictions valid? Do our predictions conform to what we observe? Can we improve the model? So abstractions, scaling, and lambda elements, those are the basic principles of mathematical modeling. So abstraction is about choosing the right level of detail for the model. So when we make a model, you will not include all the details. So you'll be abstracting the internal details to some level. So the level of detail you need to have in the model depends on the intended use of that model. If the model is used for manufacturing people, then it should have more details. If the purpose of the model is something layman, you will not show all the details, internals, you will abstract. So the level of abstraction depends on the purpose of the model, right? And scaling also decided based on abstraction. If you don't need all the details, you can reduce the scale, right? If you want all the details, you need to increase the scale, right? So scaling is deciding about the magnitude or size of the model with respect to the physical dimension of the device or object being designed. That again depends on the abstraction. And lumped model is something like all these are aggregated into less detailed or abstract expressions called lumped element. So what we lump into lumped elements depends on the scale as well as the abstraction. For example, there is an example, we can model an airplane in many different ways, depending on our goals. If you want to just test to lay out a flight pattern or trajectory, we can simply consider the airplane as a point mass. You need not make a real plane in actual shape and the size. You just consider a point mass where you aggregate all the mass of the plane and try to test the flight plan or the trajectory. That is the purpose of that model, mathematical model. Consider the plane as a point mass moving with respect to a spherical coordinate system.
Hello.
Sir, yes,
Matthew,
yes.
sir.
Yes.
Sir,
Yeah,
I just have a presentation in applied. Can I leave?
Yes, we'll wind up. Amida Miss, Divya Miss.
Okay, sir.
Only this.
Yes, sir.
So this is the last topic. So
Is the-
you can. I am not very strong in this area, this modeling, mathematical modeling. So I will not add any value when continuing this. So we'll wind up the presentation.
Okay, so, it's okay, sir. We'll read it, and if we have any
Yes.
problems, we'll discuss to the creator.
Only few more slides are there. That's it.
Okay, sir.
Otherwise, the initial presentations were all useful. I suppose.
Yeah, it was useful, sir.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Vishnu sir. Thank you, Divya Miss and Amita Miss. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sir, can you send the updated slide? Is it updated?
Updated. Yes, I have it updated. I will share it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.